joining us. Today I have Temi. I'm super excited to speak to her because she is a business advisor. She's an attorney and based in Houston, and she knows all about contracts. And so I was like, who else but Temi to speak to the African Diaspora Hub and other listeners about contracts and how to protect yourself as a business owner. Welcome, Temi.
Hello. Hey, I'm really excited to be here today. This is my first Facebook Live, and all this technology is really cool. It makes me feel hip. I'm not in a book, this is amazing. So thank you for the opportunity.
So Temi, let's jump into it. What is like the most common problem that entrepreneurs come to you with?
The most common problem entrepreneurs come to me with, well, I'll say there's two or three, and it's not quite a contract one. A lot of times people just want to start businesses and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of figuring out, okay, I know the law is involved somehow. How is it involved? What does it entail? And what does it look like for me and my individual business? So I think that's the biggest question I get when entrepreneurs and solopreneurs come and talk to me. That's the biggest one. I think the next one is a lot of times people have issues. I get a lot of people coming to me in the aftermath of signing a bad lease. So when people aren't reading their contracts and they now find themselves in some type of situation where, they're having disagreements with their landlord, or there's something that's going on that they didn't anticipate, or the landlord's trying to make changes. That's I think my second most common question that comes from entrepreneurs is, okay, this is a bad lease, or I'm in a situation, how do I get out of it? And so, yeah, there's a lot there.
When they come to you, especially with the bad lease question, how do you advise them? What do you suggest they, well, actually, wait, let me go back. When they come to you, what is the very first thing an entrepreneur should do when they're about to sign a contract?
They need to get it reviewed. They need to read it. I mean, I'll be 100%. As an attorney, I'm biased. I think you need to get a lawyer to go in and read it, because there are a lot of, you're a lawyer too. There's a lot of stuff that they taught us in school, and a lot of stuff that we have eyes for. Things, one of the things that I love to point out is there's, that phrase, I just drew a blank. There's one about the essence of time. It's a small phrase, but it makes a huge difference in a contract. And one of the things that I've seen landlords do is they use that phrase to their benefit in contracts, but it won't be favorable to a tenant. And so it's little things like that. So I advise anybody who's about to sign a contract, especially a lease one, like a lot of commercial leases, these are long-term. These are 3, 4, 5-year leases, and you're spending thousands of dollars. And if you don't get it reviewed, you don't know what types of rights you might be waiving. So my first advice, my first tip is to make sure that you understand your contract. And the best way to usually understand your contract is to have it reviewed by an attorney.
That makes perfect sense. What is some terms that you think are common in contracts that are used against entrepreneurs?
So one of the things that I think might be used against them is there's lots of clauses about maybe arbitration, for example. I don't think it's used against them, but it's one that they should be aware of, Mm-hmm. So right now, and this is one of the things that I really want to talk about, is just it's expensive to go to court. And I don't think entrepreneurs realize how expensive it is, right? And so one of the things that business owners, contracts in general, people they're contracting with, they have these arbitration clauses built into their contracts. And what arbitration does is it takes you out of the court system, which could be good or it could be bad. It really depends on your situation and where you stand on this contract.
Mm-hmm.
Those arbitration clauses really make a difference with regards to how you can fight or defend yourself if a problem arises. And so that's one major clause that I think people need to pay attention to. I also think you need to pay attention to maybe choice of law clauses. So these are clauses that tell you what law controls your contract. One thing that people tend to think is that the law is the same all over the place, and it's not. A lot of laws are state specific. And so a contract law in Texas might be different from a contract law in New York. And people who have these sophisticated lawyers, they're going to write contracts in favor of the state that helps them. If you're talking about big contracts. And so people need to be aware of that, things like that can make a huge difference with regards to your rights to, again, defend yourself and protect yourself if situations come up.
I think especially the arbitration clause, like anytime I see a contract, that I see an arbitration clause, my heart sinks a little bit because I'm like, do you know how expensive that is? Like, you have to pay for the retired judges, whoever it is, salary.
Yeah.
Pay for the court reporter or somebody to transcribe the meeting. And the reason that big corporations have arbitration clauses is because they want to take you out of small claims court.
Yep.
So a lot of business owners, they could go to small claims court, and small claims court is not expensive. It's very reasonable, and it's easy. Like, you could just file, you go to your courthouse and just file. But because there's arbitration clauses and everything, then suddenly things, instead of something being $100, $120 to file, now it's $2,000. And it's like, you could have saved that money if you never had the arbitration clause. Exactly. And I've also noticed people who don't want to pay lawyers, they come to me with contracts that they copied and pasted for somewhere else, and they are like mad. And I'm like, no, this doesn't apply to you. Can you talk about that at length, please?
Yes. And I mean, and you're just 100% right. It happens all the time. People want to save money and they say, hey, I can just Google this because Google is available. You can just Google, you've heard about maybe a non-disclosure agreement. So you type it in and you say the first one that comes in, it looks nice. It looks like it has fancy words. You don't know what it means. And they download it, copy, paste it, and they use that. But then they don't know to what extent they're usually not protecting their actual rights. It's not applicable to them. And it's just a huge issue that entrepreneurs definitely face. And it's something that you just got to avoid. I mean, one of the things about, like, a lot of times I actually think that it's better to figure out in your own language what you want and write out if like money is a huge issue. And I'm not advocating for this. The best is to go to an attorney and have them customize, and draft a contract for you. But I still think that there are times where it might even be better to write it out in your own language, because then you at least understand what it is that you are agreeing to and what the other person is. It's all about expectations and making these things clear and making these things plain. And when you download something online, you're not clear about the expectations. You don't know what it means. And the person who's signing it doesn't know what it means. And, it just works against you ultimately.
Exactly. I definitely agree. So everyone who is watching us right now, I'm seeing comments. Hello, Nicole. Hey. Hello, Stefan. Hello, Vivian. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you guys have any questions, anyone who's watching this right now, if you have any questions or comments about anything we're saying, type it in the comments. We're going to read it and we're going to pull comments from there and I guess talk about it. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Cool. So
Temi, you said that you advise people to write down exactly what they want before in a contract before they go see an attorney. Can you talk about that some more?
Yes. I think, an attorney's job in with regards to drafting contracts is to help you really figure out what you want and make sure the other party understands what they want and make sure that exchange is made crystal clear. Of course, we also look out for risk and think about things that you might not think of. But the first step is you having an understanding of what you want this agreement to look like. And so you need to be able to sit down and think through, okay, what am I contracting about? What is being exchanged? What am I offering and what am I getting in return? All right, that's what you need to have clear. You need to be sure about who you're entering into an agreement with. One of the things that trip people up is sometimes, you create an LLC or maybe you have a DBA and you don't know who to put on this contract. Well, that makes a difference in terms of who is held accountable and whether you're going to be able to get any type of recovery if this thing becomes an issue. You also want to be sure you're clear about things like the cost, the price, like money. Of course, everybody's pretty aware that you want to put down money in your contract. You see that all the time. But things like your timing, when do you expect to be paid? What are the consequences of being paid late? Are there going to be extra fees that are tacked on? How are we going to deal with that? Another thing people don't usually consider is, what does it take for your contract to end? Yeah. A lot of people think that if somebody doesn't do their end of the bargain, that automatically means that their portion is over. And that's just not right by law, unless it's like documented in the contract. It's not an automatic end if somebody doesn't hold up their end of the bargain. And so there are things like that that you really need to make sure you have in your contract. And you need to have an idea of what you want that to look like for you before you go and talk to an attorney, so that they can make sure those expectations are clear. And another thing is that, an attorney will guide you along those ways. So sometimes you might not know all those things up front. A good attorney will be able to ask you those extra questions, will help you think a little bit deeper about this commitment that you're basically entering into, because that's what a contract is, or an agreement is, some type of commitment. So a good attorney is going to sit down and ask you more about why you're doing this. Who are you entering this in? Who are you engaging with? What are you hoping to get at the end? How long is this supposed to take? And things like that.
Yeah, I think that's great, especially when you mentioned sit down and think about, like, just actually work through how you want the contract to protect you. What do you want from the contract? Especially payments, and especially, I think, clauses about, like, rent. So yeah. I don't know if it's smart for an entrepreneur to rent a place for 3 years. Like, that isn't, like, in my mind, is there a way that they can negotiate that to like a year, or commercial leases, are they typically that long?
It depends on where you're trying to, the space that you're trying to lease out. So you can find some that are just going to be 1 year. They're going to be smaller spaces. But it really depends. I've seen everything from 1 year to 5 years. You're not going to see anything for less than a year. Generally speaking, that's going to be uncommon. But most of the time, especially the more, let's say, so if you're not trying to do just like a basic suite, but you're trying to rent out maybe like a floor or a large, like it's a substantive piece of property that you're trying to lease out, a lot of times those are going to be 3 to 5 years. And there's going to be, there are lots of different ways that they can kind of package your rent. They might be putting all these additional fees, and they might be trying to add in things that they don't need to add in with regards to like maintenance. You might end up finding yourself paying for administrative stuff that you don't need to pay for if you don't know that it's being included in all these, like all the legalese that you find in these contracts. So it's weird, but in terms of, and I get your point. I want to go back to what you're saying, where it's kind of risky to go here. And, and sometimes, I mean, I think it depends on where you are in your stage as an entrepreneur.
That's true.
And your projections for your particular business, because there's some businesses that you know that you need, that location is all that matters for your particular business. If you know that and you have a good projection with regards to like where your placement is and where your industry is going, it might not be a bad commitment. I've seen people flourish under those in some agreements like that. But if you're going to be entering into a long-term 3, 5, 10-year agreement for a commercial lease, you definitely need to speak with a lawyer. Like, if you don't, that's just a big no-no. And I've told people, because people have come to talk to me after, and most of the time there's nothing I can do when you've already signed a contract for 5 years that waives your rights, that says you take this premise as is, and you signed it, and now you find out that the AC isn't working. And now you find out that, all these things that you need for your business to run, they're not there. You didn't do your homework up front. And I think people need to also think about it in terms of like just mathematically. A lot of these places that are requiring people to do 3, 5-year leases, these are not people who are paying $500 a month. These are not people paying $700 a month. These are people paying $1,500 a month, $3,000 a month. So when you think about how much you are actually investing into this piece of paper, if an attorney asks you to pay $1,500 to review it, it's worth it. Because if you sign it and you get stuck in this bad contract for 5 years, with $3,000 a month, that's $36,000 each year. These are huge figures. And I mean, a lot of small business owners are making these decisions without really sitting down and doing that homework. And I have one other thing. One of the things that I like to really push for, because I want people to have strong businesses, is not just for people to have attorneys on their side, but to have an accountant on your side.
Yes.
That makes a huge difference. And look, I'm not an accountant, they're not paying me to say this, but they can help you make, better financial decisions. They can help you do better tax planning so that you know where your investments are going and you know that you're going to make a return. And you can make those projections and say, is this the right decision for me at this particular time in my business?
That makes sense. So the thing is, we are biased. Oh, wait, also, wait. Thank you, Liz, for liking. Thank you, Christina, for liking the video. Stefan, Tolu, thank you guys so much for watching. And Temi, like, we are both attorneys, so I do think we're a little bit biased with pushing like people to go see attorneys. So let's say an entrepreneur does not have any money to go see an attorney, but they receive a contract from a vendor. What are the things they should look for?
All right, so I actually have a list. There's some, well, I do have a list, and I have some resources on my website, and at the end I'll tell you more about those.
Yes.
But some of the things that I think that you should look for, so I need you to look for, of course, the parties. Who are you entering into a contract with? That's number one. Make sure it's very clear. If it's an LLC that you're entering into a contract with, make sure that LLC's name is spelled out, like it's clear. You want to know that this is the person you're doing business with, because if the person, let's say, I don't know, people can just get really iffy about that. You can end up entering into an agreement with someone else, and then you can kind of escape being able to hold somebody liable for what they do wrong. So that's one thing that I need you to look for. I want you to look for, oh, this is a big one. I'm kind of skipping. I'm thinking about a contract in my head. But I really want people to look for warranties and guarantees and waivers. Those are huge. Warranties are things that people are promising. So I want you to look through your contract and look for lists of things that people are saying they're going to do. Highlight them, pay attention to them, make sure you understand what they're saying they're promising you. A lot of times what you'll find is that people aren't promising you things, they're actually waiving their promises. And so when you start looking for promises, you'll probably find something called a waiver. A waiver is when you're saying, hey, you know, this could be my right, but I'm letting it go. And those are you will find those all over the place in commercial leases. Yeah, all over the place. They'll say we're waiving warranties of merchantability. We're waiving this type of warranty and that type. Those are bad. You need to look up those terms. You need to figure out what those waivers are and make sure you're comfortable with it. A lot of times you'll find that you're not. But those are some of the things I want you to look at. I want you to look at penalties for late fees and look at how those are described. Sometimes you'll find that, especially in landlord-tenant, and I'm not a landlord-tenant attorney, I'm more of a small business person, but I've seen this in commercial leases where the way that the penalties for late fees are just astronomical, and they don't really make sense. Sometimes you know, it's like within 5 days and then everything is due up front, like just crazy, 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 crazy things. I mean, are there any other things that you've seen? Because you know.
I think especially small businesses need to watch out for arbitration clauses. Honestly, if there's a way, if you are a small business, you really need to remove an arbitration clause, because it is only for if you are Macy's or you are a supermarket or you are a multi-million-dollar business.
You
want arbitration clauses in your stuff. Like you want, like, yes, I don't care. Because arbitration clauses are to deter people from pursuing a lawsuit. That's what they're for.
Yeah.
I think people think that it's to protect them. No, it is not. Because you need to be able to go take stuff to small claims court. Small claims court is very cheap. Yeah. I think you need to also look for who, I've noticed this, write down your company name. If you filed an LLC, the LLC is liable. Please, 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 please. Do not write down your own name. That is not why you filed the LLC. That is what the LLC and business formation is for, to protect you. So when I see contracts where you write down your physical name and not the company name, I get scared. I'm like, dude, what happened?
And then I want us to even talk a little bit about that, because from an LLC formation, I don't think, so one of the things people should understand is that you create this LLC, and people always come to me, I want to form an LLC, and that's good. You understand that. But I want people to understand what an LLC does and how to protect that thing that you've registered. So an LLC is called a limited liability company. And what it does is it basically creates a line between what your personal assets are and what your business assets are. It creates a new being that is your business, and that's your LLC. And it says it's separate from you. Now, with that separation, it means that if your LLC gets into trouble, your LLC gets into trouble and not you, because you two are separate. However, you don't stay separate if you make certain mistakes. And it's really important to understand that. So one of the things that she just talked about, putting down your name rather than your LLC, is going to put you on the line when you created this LLC for it to be able to be separate. That's one area where you can kind of mess things up a little bit. Another area is something that they call commingling. And this is about keeping your books, keeping your numbers, keeping your documentation clear. If you form an LLC, you want to make sure that you have a separate bank account for your business.
That's very true.
Yeah, and this separate business bank account is not your pocketbook. It's not the place that you go and use when you need to get gas and you don't feel like touching your purse. No, you don't do that. Because once you've decided to do that, the law calls it piercing a veil. So this is the separation, your divide between your personal and your business. When you start treating your business like it's your personal and your personal like it's your business, the law says you have pierced the corporate veil, means you've basically removed it. And they can treat everything as one big old pocketbook. So if somebody comes after your LLC, guess what? You've created a hole. They can now also come after your personal assets. That means if it's a huge issue, let's say it's a terrible case and it's thousands and thousands of dollars and it wipes out all the money in your LLC, usually having an LLC, that limited liability protection, says that this is how far you can go and no further. But once you've pierced it, now they can go after your car. Now they can go after your house. Now they can go after your personal money that you were trying to keep separate when you said you wanted an LLC. That all goes away. So that's a very important thing that she brought up. And again, putting your name down instead of your LLC is going to cause that to happen.
Temi, thank you so much for explaining it very well and for letting people know that they cannot treat their business account like their personal bank account. Because you're right, it is piercing of the veil, and then judges do not look at it nicely. It's like you've kind of negated everything you sought to protect against when you filed for your LLC. So thank you for mentioning that. Also, thank you, Kofi, for joining us, for liking. Salem Sony, thank you so much for being here. So Temi, what is the worst contract you've ever seen as a lawyer?
That's a good question. The worst contract I've ever seen. I remember one. I mean, it's usually, so it was, the worst contract that I've seen was one of these contracts that somebody downloaded online. And you could tell it wasn't written by a lawyer, but it had like legalese jumbled up into it. It was, and it was for an independent contractor working in the wedding industry. And it just felt like a pointless contract. It was one of those where you look at it and you're like, why is it here? I can't even really articulate why it was so bad, because there just was nothing substantively protected. It was more so like, put your name here, put your address here. And, but it didn't really get to the heart of what was being exchanged, what was the value being offered, and really the heart of how do we want our arrangement to work. Ultimately, that's what I think is the most important when you come up with these contracts, is making sure both sides are very clear. This is what I expect from you, and this is what I expect from you. I mean, and we do all the other stuff. We think about all the other expectations with regards to when things go wrong. You want all that included, but the most important part is for you, whoever you're contracting with, to actually understand. One of the things that I have found, the reason why I'm really big on clarity of expectations when it comes to contracts, because a lot of the people that I happen to work with are really, really fresh in starting their businesses. They're and they're not dealing with huge figures. Some of them are, but a lot of them are dealing with smaller numbers. And what I found is that they are neglecting to take the care that is necessary. There's a certain level of care that an entrepreneur should come to the table with when they're entering into an agreement before they're even thinking about the legal implications, because they want to make sure that their presentation as a business owner is secure.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something I kind of wanted to go to the heart of, because one of the things that I found when people come to me to ask me for contracts is it's more so about the way they're perceived as a business owner. People want to be perceived as being someone who is a serious business person who has their stuff together. But what I found is you want the perception of that with a contract, but you don't want to necessarily do the hard work of like understanding the details of your agreement to make that a substantive perception. You get what I'm saying? So like you want someone to write up a contract that says, hey, if this happens, I'm going to sue you and this is going to happen and all of the world is going to fall apart. But you don't want to sit down and think about, exactly when you want things done. You don't want to have a clear timeline. You don't want an attorney asking you those questions. You're against it because it makes you feel iffy and it feels like somebody's stepping on your toes. But that's what it means to be a serious business owner. It means to think about the details, and not be afraid to kind of pin those things down. And so I find that people kind of are like in this, a lot of my clients, I'll say, who are starting off, they're kind of wavering back and forth between, I want people to perceive me as an awesome business owner, so write this contract, but I haven't really done, my homework to really think through the details.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that everything you just said is perfectly, because the worst contract I ever saw was something that somebody downloaded and it actually had no legal language. It actually had no protection. It was 25 pages of fluff.
25 pages.
And then when I can't even say I redid it. I just created a new contract and I told, we sat down and we worked through it, and the person, my client, they didn't want to push back at their vendor because they felt like they might lose the business. They might lose their business and they need their business. But I was like, you need to have these things. You guys need to have a discussion about it. But they shut it down. I thought that was very interesting.
Yes, and that's one of the things. So my first, I host different seminars here in Houston, and my first one was called Contracts Don't Cure Crazy. And the reason why I named it that was for that particular reason, is that I find that I think we all suffer from it. If you run any type of business at all, like even as a lawyer, anything you're doing on your own, there's this fear. There's this fear that, hey, this opportunity is going to slip away from me. And what I found is that sometimes in our desperate moments, we make the worst decisions.
Exactly.
And so if you're scared to have that conversation with that person, what does that really mean about the person that you're entering into an agreement with?
Exactly. That's it, exactly.
And in the end, and so my thing is that a contract is not going to do a contract is going to be limited to its power if you can't have that deep conversation. If you can't sit down face to face and say, these are the expectations, this is what we're doing, the person's not going to care about a contract. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes when people are dealing with smaller items, when you're selling something that might be only a couple $100, are you really going to want to spend $120 to go to small claims court when when what you sold was only $500?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to lose out ultimately, is the point. You're going to lose out on that money because the person you decided to enter into an agreement with was not the right person, and you were too scared to have that conversation up front and say no. And then, it's just going to be done because you're not going to want to spend $120. You're going to look at any attorney because I'll sit down and maybe consult with you to go to small claims court, but you're not going to find an attorney who's really going to want to go with you and represent you at small claims court.
That's true.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And so you're going to sit down and you're going to be wondering, hey, you're just going to lose out. And so my thing is, let's not be scared to have those hard conversations up front with people. Even when me and you spoke today, you sent me some stuff about, not disclaimers, but about,
Yes.
And what that told me was she's serious about what she's doing. She's a serious business owner. She's a serious entrepreneur. She's serious about her brand. She's serious about, the prestige of what she does. She values it. And if I didn't know how to respond to that, then you should be concerned. Like what are we hiding from? Why is the truth so scary?
That's a good point. I like that you mentioned the character of the person that you're doing business with, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially people who are beginning entrepreneurs, not the people who've been in the game for a while, but like even when I started my own law firm, I was scared to approach people. I'm a lawyer and I'm scared to approach potential clients like, this is how much I charge. No, I cannot do it for cheaper. And it was really difficult for me. And then I realized that I had to turn away some clients because they were too insane. There's a reason I was scared. They were the problem, not me.
Yeah.
Some people I was very comfortable with. I was like, yo, I'm not going to do this. Nope, nope, nope. Other people I was leery of because they were offering so much money, but there was something off in their demeanor or personality, the way that they interacted with me. But I just saw the money. I was just thinking about the money. And as we both know as lawyers, a lot of lawyers share stories of just hellish clients.
Yes. Yes. Pray.
And it's a problem because a lot of lawyers can't drop their clients at a certain point during trial. You can't.
They can't drop them. Exactly.
So all this money they thought they were going to make, it ended up not being worth it because their client was just a demon. So
and I think entrepreneurs know that too. Yeah. I think we have to be able to, and it's scary because bills have to be paid, right? But I think what it really, and this is some of the stuff I'm really interested in, like how we think about our businesses and understanding the value that we provide. And when we have those issues, it means that we have to go back to the drawing table and figure out what is our value, you know? And so I had those issues too, and I had to go back and sit down. And then I think about the math, you know, about like these leases, for example, where people I know are signing off thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think about the value that I'm providing. And you have to be really comfortable with that. And then be able to say no. And sometimes people are not going to understand your value, and that's okay. You know, you're just going to have to be okay with that. It's a business lesson. I don't want to touch that because that'll get me on a whole nother spiel that would go on and on. So I'm just going to stop.
Well, I definitely agree. We could go on and on about that. Thank you, Natasha, for joining and commenting. Thank you, Samuel, for liking. I just appreciate, and Kofi for being here. Thank you so much for everyone being here. But yeah, so what else do you want to add about contracts? Because contracts are actually incredibly important. I think especially, I know you mentioned a lot, but especially payments. Like what are the terms that people need to have in their contract regarding payments?
You need to be able to say exactly how much is going to be charged for what. You need to be able to explain when this payment is due. So is this payment due upfront? Is this payment due in partial? Are you paying it like in installments, like half and upfront, half at the end? When exactly is that occurring? Is this going to be something where people are paying for supplies? That's something some people kind of overlook. If something is being created, who's paying for the supplies that are being included? If you're doing something that requires you to travel, are you going to require your clients to pay for that, for your travel time? Or how are you going to decide that? Those are some of the payment terms that I think are really important. Is there going to be a late fee? I advise entrepreneurs, depending on your industry, to probably include that, because one of my friends told me that when you include a late fee, you make yourself a priority when somebody's trying to decide who to pay. And so I think that those are certain fees that you want to include with regards to payment terms. You also, if there's a way in which you want to receive payment, you want to be clear about that as well. I think the two things though are big are how much and when, and for what. You know, those are the three things that I think that with regards to money in particular, you want to know. And then sometimes there are instances where a contract, if somebody messes up a contract, there are huge financial consequences. In those cases, you might want to include something called a liquidation clause, or something you talk about, not liquidation clause, I'm messing up terminology, but you want to include what the consequences are if someone is late with regards to how are you going to recover money if they mess up. So those are some of the things that you want to make sure you include and that you think about when we're talking about payment terms in particular.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything. Can you give us some examples of how you've seen like the realities of law, like how it plays out in business?
Okay, so I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. It's more so with regards to when people are it's the mindset that people have depending on their industry, whether they're going to be able to actually fight some of their cases. I think that people need to value their contracts more than they perceive they will, because they might not get to court. And what I mean by that, I know I just said a whole lot. It sounds kind of messy, but let me explain what I mean. We are in a day and age where litigation and court is expensive. Small claims court, if you have small claims court available to you, that's going to be great. And that's going to be your best option. But a lot of times, if you're trying to go into the regular district court, it's expensive. And so you want to make sure that if there's ever a dispute with someone about your contracts, you want to make sure that your contract is so airtight that you are able to shut down any opposition immediately. You don't want people thinking that we might be able to go to court and argue this out, because it's going to waste your time and it's going to waste your money. You don't want that. So for me, when I think about somebody like valuing their contract, it's not just so that when you get to court, you win. It's so that you don't even have to go to court. You know, put in the time, put in the effort right then, so that when someone's saying, oh, I thought we agreed that I was going to come in on these, you know, let's say it's an employment contract. I was going to come in on these 5 days and, you know, have these other days off. Well, if it's clearly explained in your contract exactly what was expected, if you have attachments to say the job description is going to be attached to page 5, and all of this is explicitly laid out, nobody's going to be able to come and start arguing that this happened and that happened. And a lot of times people make these threats, oh, I'm going to take you to court. When they go down and they sit and they look at the actual math, it doesn't happen, especially if they don't have a case. Exactly. A lawyer is going to look at the contract. You know, they might talk to their friend. They might call a lawyer and say, hey, I have a case. The lawyer is going to look at it and say, this contract, you broke it. You breached it. You're in the wrong. So you want to have that type of power. You want your contract to speak for you and shut things down. So that's kind of the reality of the law that I want people to understand, is that going to court is not as easy as it looks on TV. Like, you're not going to be able to sue everybody. It's just, you know, I have people who want to sue everybody, like everybody, like, oh, this person messed up my order at the store. Like, and I'm like, you're not going to be able to do that. It costs hundreds of dollars to go to court. And people don't realize that. And so you have to be extra careful you have to really use a lot of forethought. You have to really be thoughtful up front to protect yourself, because you don't have unlimited time and you don't have unlimited money. And that's, you know, going to court, it's really a luxury if it's outside of small claims court, you know, and then I just wanted to, these are some of the realities that I want people to understand. It is a luxury to be able to fight in the downtown courts in Houston. You know, it's not something everybody can do. And if you come in with that mindset, I think you make better decisions up front. And so I wanted people to kind of understand that.
I think I of course agree with everything you said. I of course agree. So can you tell us about your practice in Houston?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a small business attorney. Right now, what I've been working on is working with people who are starting off, and they're really focusing on harnessing this new era that we're entering into with technology. So people who are really big on their online business or their online presence and social media presence. And so what I want to help people do is I want to make sure people are protecting their name, establishing their businesses, and keeping their profits. What that means for me and in helping my clients is, like I said, keeping you out of court. I don't want you to have to do, like, it might happen eventually as you grow bigger. It's just a part of business life. But to the extent that we can keep you out of the messy and wasteful judicial system, I want to help my clients do that. I also want people to be able to protect their name. So we have a lot of people who are big on pushing their brands, and I think that's excellent. We know that with business, your brand is everything. How people perceive you is how people will pay you. It's how your business will grow. What are we doing to protect that image online and protect that image on social media? Things like trademarking, things like copywriting, making sure that once you've trademarked your items, you're able to send cease and desist letters when people are trying to copy your stuff and shut it down. Trying to shut down all the people who are trying to come up against you, basically. And then additionally, just helping you figure out upfront, what is it going to take for me to start this business and grow this business? You know, business is running a business is not easy. Anybody who has decided to become an entrepreneur will know that it's filled with ups and downs, and you're excited one minute and you're scared the next minute. And it can be really confusing. And I think especially from a legal perspective, you have people come and they just know that, like I said up front, the law is involved, but I don't know what to do. My practice is there to kind of help you in those different stages, especially if you're an online business, making sure you're keeping up with different FTC, different requirements for the technology you use, making sure you have your websites legally protected, and the content that you put up there protected. That's the focus of my business practice here in Houston. And then the other thing is I really want people to be empowered to know and understand what they're doing with regards to the law. So I want my clients to be able to understand that my contract that I'm sending out to people says X, Y, and Z. I want people to know that when they post a privacy policy on their website, they are promising their clients X, Y, and Z. And they're saying these are our expectations. I really think an informed client, an informed customer is a powerful customer. And so for me, it's more than just doing contracts. It's really sitting down and advising and helping you and really, really walking with my clients through this thing called entrepreneurship. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that was very helpful, especially people in Houston, but I know you work with people around the country and world, really.
Yes, yes. I have a couple of clients who are, who have international presence, and we kind of figure out, okay, what does this mean on an international scale? What might be your protections if you're outside of the US and you're trying to figure out what you're doing there? Let's say you're also trying to figure out, should I start my business here in Texas or should I start in another state? What are the benefits? How is this going to help me tax-wise? Because a lot of people have questions about taxes. Who should I talk to? And those are some of the things that I want to help people really understand and make better decisions on. It's all about helping people make better decisions so that we can have stronger businesses and be more firmly established. And I just want to let people know there are a ton of resources available on my website. Some of the stuff that we've talked about, even I know I have a PDF about different contract clauses to look for. I think I have like 15 listed there. I have a handout also available on my website about ways to protect intellectual property. And I just recently did this new thing that I think will be really, really helpful to small business owners. It's an assessment. You can go on my website and download this true-false quiz with 14 questions, and it helps you think about the different ways your business might be at risk. So you'll go through, and it's really simple statements, but then at the end, once you've answered it, you can go back and find out if I said true to this question, what are the legal implications? How am I opening myself up to different legal risks that I might not have thought about before? So that's a really good resource that's available on my website. So, and then some of my blog posts also, I have something, it's kind of old, but I said if you're dealing with a small figure and you really just need something on paper, but you really, really, really cannot afford an attorney, I have some more guidelines as to different terms that I think you should include and how you should go about writing down at least a document that records your exchange. So go ahead and visit my website to see if you can get some more information to kind of help you if you're just trying to figure out this whole business thing. Hopefully there's a lot there that you'll find valuable.
Okay, Temi, can you also give your website URL? Someone in the questions asked about it.
Yes, so I think I'll go back and type that up later on that side, but I'll tell you now because I'm not even looking at I'm not looking at the Facebook page because I'm scared to like move my computer and mess up the technology. But my website is www.toslegal.com. So that's TOSLEGAL.com. And so there are lots of resources available there that I think people will find really, really, really valuable.
Well, thank you so much, Temi, for joining me. I think we touched on everything. Can you think of anything else we should talk about?
Not right now. We're probably going to have to do this again. There's so much more. I think we can do another talk, maybe another time about trademarking, because that's something I think that is
its own subject.
It's its own subject. And I think that one of the things that I want people to start thinking about as business owners is I want us to pay more attention to what we create that's valuable. How can we maximize the ideas and the content that we create? The people who are amazing business owners who have built big brands, they have their ideas, they value it, and then they repackage and they repackage and they repackage and they protect and they protect and they protect. So I want us to talk eventually about trademarking. So me mentioning it is just to put a flag in your mind when you're creating things that this might be a valuable asset. And, you know, I just want us to start thinking differently about the way we run our businesses. But I think for contracts, we did a pretty good, primer on the subject. Of course, we could go on and on, but, you know, we don't have the time for that today.
Okay, thank you so much, Temi, for joining me. I knew you were the right attorney for me to reach out to for us to speak about this, because I know you love contracts and I love them too.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. This was great. And I really, you know, I just want to wish everybody out there who's trying to do this entrepreneurship thing the best of luck. You know, I think that, you know, it's hard, but I think it's worth it if we do it right. So thank you all for joining us as well. I'm really excited. I can't wait to see where all of our businesses end up in the future. You know, we remember these times where we're all on Facebook Live talking about how we're going to, you know, do these things. It's going to be awesome memories for us.
Yeah.